we're diving into a piece that explores how our holiday music playlist is, well, essentially rigged.
Right.
It looks at the surprising mechanisms from record label ownership to algorithmic design that make sure the same classic Christmas songs are everywhere we go, every single December.
Mm-hmm.
And what I loved, what really stood out to me was this sharp, compelling argument that none of this is random, that it's, and this is the killer phrase, emotionally engineered.
That phrase is fantastic.
It is, it's gold. But I think it's being deployed a little late in the game right now. So my first point is this. While the analysis does a great job revealing the commercial controls, integrating that concept of emotional engineering much, much earlier will maximize the piece's argumentative power.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right now, it feels like the mechanical stuff, the ownership, the licensing, is separate from the psychological impact. The discussion of how music shapes memory, linking back to childhood and warmth and safety. It's a powerful conclusion, but because it's at the end, it doesn't get to frame all the financial arguments that come before it.
I completely agree with that diagnosis. I mean, the core message is so powerful, but that emotional gut punch, which is, the real mechanism of control here, it just arrives too late.
Yeah.
It's like revealing the villain's motivation in the last 5 minutes of the movie. We need the stakes established up front. We have to make the listener understand that the psychological vulnerability, that brain link between these songs and family and safety, that's the target.
That's the target, yes.
And then, once you've established that, then you detail the corporate mechanisms that are built to exploit it. It reframes the whole thing. It's not just a business analysis anymore.
No, it's something bigger.
It becomes a systemic critique of how human memory itself is being turned into an asset to be exploited.
So what's a concrete way to do that, to flip it?
My strongest suggestion is to just flip the opening entirely, seriously. Instead of waiting until the end to drop that emotionally engineered line, open with it. Start by establishing that fundamental truth. Something like, Christmas music doesn't just play at Christmas. It actively shapes our core memories.
Okay, I like that.
And then you pivot immediately to the killer question. So, who actually owns those memories?
Oh, that's good.
That one question connects the intangible feeling, the nostalgia, directly to the tangible financial asset, the master recordings. And suddenly, all the talk about record labels and licensing, it feels deeply, deeply relevant. And frankly, a bit unethical.
That is a phenomenal fix. It really elevates the conversation instantly. You could also, I suppose, keep a similar structure, but just weave that emotional stake in throughout.
As a recurring theme, you mean?
Exactly. Like, when you're discussing the nitty-gritty of licensing contracts, you explicitly link the strategy not just to saving money, but to maximizing emotional connection while minimizing any kind of dissonance. You'd be showing the engineering at work in every single financial decision.
So you're constantly reminding the audience.
Yeah, you're reminding them they're listening to something designed to bypass their critical thinking and go straight for the nostalgia receptors.
That's it. You're turning these, dry legal and financial terms into the actual weapons being used by these corporations. It makes a discussion about royalty splits feel less like a business lecture and more predatory.
Which is the core argument of the piece.
Precisely.
Okay, moving on from that core structure, let's look at the section on retail. The argument hinges on this great line that Christmas music is chosen because it's statistically proven not to annoy shoppers.
Right. The ultimate inoffensive background noise.
Exactly. But it feels like a critical claim that needs a bit more digging into the specific financial implications from retailers. I mean, the argument that the music is optimized to keep people in the store longer is sound, but it kind of glosses over the high-stakes risk analysis that's really driving these choices.
I think I know what you're getting at. It states the outcome, the optimized music, but it doesn't really show the cold hard calculation behind it.
Yes.
The piece leans on this idea of irritation avoidance, but I'm not sure we've really defined the dollar and cents stake of a listener, dropping off. My suggestion would be to really expand the analysis of that retail environment. You need to focus on defining the financial stakes of a customer getting agitated.
Right.
Articulate why these music providers are so incredibly risk-averse that they will always prioritize old established songs over anything that's even slightly polarizing. It moves the argument from they want you to stay longer to something much more dramatic, like they are terrified of you leaving even 1 minute early.
That's a huge shift in emphasis. It's about fear, not just optimization. So how do we make that fear, that potential loss, feel tangible to the reader?
Well, to make it tangible, you have to spend a moment on the counterfactual. Ask the question, what specific financial loss does one annoyed customer actually represent?
It's not just one person leaving.
No, it's an abandoned shopping cart that was almost full. It's the loss of that impulse buy at the register. It's negative word of mouth. You could use some vivid language to describe the risk assessment they're doing. Maybe pose a direct question to the listener, something punchy like, is the potential revenue from a new song worth the risk of even a 5% increase in shoppers walking out early?
And when you frame it like that, the answer is obviously no. The risk is just way too high.
It's always no, and that ties the music directly to the bottom line, which is the whole point.
Okay, that covers the cost of risk, but the material also mentions the music being legally safest. How can we expand on that idea?
Yeah, that's another area that needs a bit more muscle. When you say legally safe, you need to give a specific, concrete example of how sticking to the classics minimizes legal complexity.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. Licensing the 1950s version of Jingle Bells, where the ownership and publishing rights are ironclad, totally consolidated, that is infinitely simpler and cheaper than licensing some brand new track.
A new track could have 5 co-writers.
Exactly. 5 co-writers, international publishing houses, complicated sync rights. Safety is directly tied to simplicity, and simplicity is tied to minimizing cost and legal headaches down the road. It just solidifies the idea that in a retail space, safety always trumps originality.
They want a frictionless, zero-risk texture, not art.
Not dynamic art, no.
All right, that really gives the retail section the teeth it needs. Now, what I really like is the pivot you make into the digital world. You take us from brick-and-mortar stores right into the cold reality of streaming algorithms. The critique of how the rich get richer is strong, but I think it could be sharpened by explicitly contrasting the economic reality of an established track versus the, almost insurmountable hurdles a new song faces. Right now, the explanation relies on phrases like safe rotation algorithms or platforms push songs that already perform well, which is true, but it doesn't have the punch to fully explain why new Christmas songs basically never break through.
That's a great observation. The material is identifying the symptom, which is the algorithmic preference, but it needs to define the playing field itself as being financially rigged, not just, slightly biased.
So what's the suggestion?
I'd structure this section around the core economic disparity, the cost comparison. You have to contrast the huge cost of acquiring new listeners for a new track versus the, essentially zero-cost annual revenue from a legacy track.
A legacy track where the ownership is locked in and it's all been paid for decades ago.
Exactly. And that shift in focus turns it from a simple algorithmic preference into a critique of an insurmountable financial structure that actively blocks new entries.
So the algorithm isn't really the villain here. It's just the auditor, kind of reflecting the existing financial rules of the game.
That's it, exactly. The algorithm is the final gatekeeper, but the system was rigged long before a track ever hits a streaming service. And to give this real impact, I'd frame the barrier for new music as an economic paradox.
A paradox. How so?
Well, think of the classics, Mariah, Bing, Wham. They're not songs anymore, they're financial assets. They spike in value every single year without any new marketing investment. They're like these perpetually generating cash machines.
They just reactivate themselves.
Right. So they outcompete any new music on licensing cost and ROI alone. A new artist has to spend millions on marketing just to get noticed. Mariah spends nothing, and her song just automatically taps into decades of emotional memory for free.
That paints a really powerful picture. We have to make sure the listener can visualize that massive disparity.
Absolutely. And then you can show how the algorithm is just reflecting that financial reality. You could, for instance, ask the listener to just stop and think about the insane marketing budget a new artist would need to overcome decades of memory shaping.
Getting spend and guaranteed low licensing costs.
Yes. The listener needs to get that the algorithm pushes the classic track not because it's inherently better, but because it is the most economically sound choice for the platform. It maximizes engagement and minimizes friction at the lowest possible cost.
It makes it clear that breaking into the Christmas music market isn't just hard, it's a financial impossibility, no matter how good your song is.
This is an incredibly insightful analysis. And that central argument that Christmas music is emotionally engineered is just brilliant. It really deserves to be front and center.
It really does.
So to recap, we've identified 3 main opportunities here. To take this from a really insightful script to a truly robust systemic critique. First, integrate that emotional engineering theme much, much earlier.
Right. Make it the frame for the whole piece.
Yes, use it to frame everything around the exploitation of human memory. That's your emotional hook. Second, expand the retail optimization analysis with clear, defined financial stakes. Really focus on defining the cost of irritation avoidance and give concrete examples of why legal safety is so critical to the bottom line. And finally, sharpen that algorithmic discussion by clearly contrasting the zero-cost economics of the legacy tracks against the impossible financial hurdles facing new music. Turn the algorithm from a biased gatekeeper into an auditor of financial reality.
Genuinely fantastic work. These are strategic adjustments, not huge rewrites, but they will transform an already compelling script into a truly powerful critique of Christmas music control. You've got all the insight there. It's just about reorganizing the argument to maximize its impact.
Well, thank you.
We really encourage you to refine the material with these suggestions, especially making that emotional hook the thesis statement. And please submit it back to us for a follow-up. We would love to see the final product.